Well, it is already affecting production levels in the United States and NATO countries. One of the big outcomes of a variety of the different multilateral meetings and even fora like the Munich Security Conference has been a broad recognition by NATO leaders that we have to increase the production of a variety of different types of ammunition and so forth, even some major end items, given the extraordinary rate of consumption on the battlefield in Ukraine. And so that is actually happening. The U.S., for example, the last I saw is trying to double the monthly production of 155 millimeter heavy artillery rounds and a variety of other rounds, again, that are being consumed at a high rate on this particular battlefield. As to the strategy, I think it gives some insights into the way to harden the country that might be applicable elsewhere, the so-called hedgehog or the poisoned frog or whatever the analogy that you want to use as the metaphorical image, that again could be useful in other locations. And beyond that, I think there will be a conviction out of this that when this is all done, and it will at some point be all done, and I tend to think there will be some kind of negotiated resolution at some point. I can't tell you when, because a great deal depends on whether or not Russian forces begin to crumble and collapse in the face of the anticipated Ukrainian offensives that we'll see in the months that lie ahead. But when that happens, I think there will be recognition that Ukraine needs an ironclad security guarantee, that our sensitivities to Moscow's concerns about, for example, NATO membership for Ukraine or some other kind of security arrangement for Ukraine, those didn't turn out too well. We did actually accede to Moscow. We did not take Ukraine into NATO. And I think with hindsight, there's a conclusion that, look, we took the Baltic states in, we took a number of other former Soviet republics into NATO. None of them has been attacked by the Russian Federation. Yet Ukraine, which we did not do that for, was vulnerable and was attacked. And we can't allow that to happen again in the future. So I think there will be some effort, very clearly, to establish, again, a very robust security arrangement for Ukraine, even as there is also a very substantial effort to help Ukraine rebuild, whether that's funded by frozen Russian funds or by those plus US, EU, G7 remains to be seen. But the numbers are very substantial. The latest estimate is well over $400 billion. Keep in perspective that the Marshall Plan in the wake of World War II, by contrast, was only about $110 or $120 billion in today's currency. So that's a very, very considerable amount. But without a security guarantee, I don't think it can actually succeed. Chinese leaders have always very assiduously studied history. They have studied in particular the history of the Soviet Union and Russia. So I'm sure that they are seeking to glean lessons from this war. What they might be, I can't tell you. And of course, it's by no means over. And it would be very premature to draw conclusions based on where we are right now. The outcome does matter in a host of different ways, including in this respect. But certainly there are efforts to take lessons from this, just as there are efforts to take lessons from it on the U.S. side, noting the limitations, as I mentioned earlier, given that this is not the systems of the future. It's not even the systems of the present in terms of range of precision munitions, the fifth generation fighters, all the capabilities that, say, the U.S. or the major Western powers can bring to bear. But sure, there are lessons. I think everyone is trying to study this and take lessons from it, just as we have always done that. Think of the intensive study of the Yom Kippur War, for example, after that took place, and the implications out of that about having to do with anti-tank guided missiles against armor, et cetera, et cetera.